Well, speaking of sports games, do you want to talk about our topic this week? Our favorite sports games.
Yes. We all know that our listeners, if there's one thing that video game fans across the world can agree upon, it's that sports games are the reasons that we all have become gamers. They're wildly entertaining, super successful, and the gem in any collection. I mean, it's the only reason to own a Genesis is to have 500 sports games.
Oh, for sure.
In my digital collection, it's a gem.
But we thought we would do a topic and talk about the ones that we actually like. So I don't know how you guys want to kick this off. I mean, obviously we've been sports themed already with Buy Run Burn. We kind of tied that together. But we're going to talk about our favorite sports games this episode.
I kind of broke them out because sports games, there are a number of ways you could do it. There are multiple styles at this point over the years. So let's kick it off with retro. And I'm thinking, Nintendo, Super Nintendo era, maybe even before that if you want to. But what are you guys' favorite retro sports games?
I mean, I think Super Spike V-Ball, obviously, if we're looking back, is one of them. And then Base Wars. Base Wars is loosely, I mean, it's baseball with robots from the future who battle. So, I mean, what's not to love about that? But as far as retro games, like sports games, that would pretty much be it. That I'll throw in Blades of Steel. And I never really played a sports game on the Super Nintendo. I mean, not too much.
Sure. I mean, I think in the early days, baseball, just kind of the flow of the sport itself, made it easy to do on the retro systems. There was a lot of them. I would probably say out of all the sports, baseball had the most.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and back then, too, baseball was still America's game, in a sense, fallen far, far off.
I was an RBI guy. I liked that series quite a bit. Like you said, Base Wars is fun. I mean, a robot that shoots baseballs out of his arm, that attracts any young boy, I think.
Right. And then, like, the dildo-armed robot that, like, dildos you to death when you're battling over the base. I'm sure it's not a dildo, but that was always what we thought it was as kids. I'm sticking with
it. Yeah. And then kind of moving into Super Nintendo, my friends had Ken Griffey, played a lot of that. I had a Genesis, which hockey was awesome on that. I played a lot of World Series baseball, which is more accurate, I guess, and that less arcadey or simplistic, I guess. And now I have Baseball Stars for Neo Geo, which I love that game. That's a good series as well for NES.
I have Baseball Stars 2 for my Neo Geo X, and that is an awesome game.
I mean, retro for me would probably have to be Tecmo Bowl, just because it's one of a handful of games that I actually had for the Nintendo.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe I forgot that.
I played that all the time. I think that'd be my favorite sports title from the NES.
Cheating and watching the other players suck their plays, I'm sure.
Yeah, you could do that quite easily.
Everyone did that. We're all jerks. Cheating jerks.
It's funny you say that. We just talked to a guy who was a, I guess, professional Tecmo Bowl player, right? I guess he goes to tournaments and is pretty good at it. So that game, as I've kind of known, is still wildly popular to play.
Yeah. I mean, this is like a hard topic for me because I never really, past like mid-middle school, I wasn't into sports. So it's like I just never touched on any of that. So like even Tecmo Bowl and Super Tecmo Bowl, like I, in passing, played a handful of games at friends' houses, but I never touched a lot of this stuff.
Then you got to throw Mike Tyson's Punch-Out too, right?
Yeah.
That's the sport.
But do you teeter that? Is that arcade style? Because like I could say NBA Jam for retro also, which is probably the only sports game I really got into on the SNES. But it's like
I guess I would classify Punch-Out as arcade as well, just because there's a lot more mechanics in there than just straight up boxing, right?
Yeah, I could see that, I guess.
Yeah.
Memorization. It is a great sports game, though.
I guess that kind of covers our retro stuff, right? I played Madden back then too, and boy, that stuff does not hold up at all.
Right. Yeah, I can't think of any other real sports games that I would have played. There's a baseball one that I used to play, but I can't remember what that's called.
Sure.
Bases Loaded, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, that would have been the other.
Yeah.
Series,
RBI
yeah.
and bases loaded they both went on 3 or 4 of them each.
Yeah, played some of that, but usually with Tecmo Bowl.
Yeah. And then one of the other styles I'll say is arcade style, which I think Punch-Out fits into that. But the real stars are obviously NBA Jam, NFL Blitz.
Yeah, I'd have to go.
And
NBA Jam would be my favorite one.
yeah, I think so too. I think I would take Jam over Blitz. Although Blitz is still a ton of fun too. Totally holds up. They both, out of all these games, probably those games hold up the best.
Well, they did the remastered NBA Jam, I think it was, wasn't it, for
Yeah, there was one
Yep.
that came out for PS3.
360?
Yeah, and PS3 and
Yeah.
Wii. Then they spun off that Midway tried to cash in on the Blitz thing, and they did like NHL Hits, didn't they?
Yep.
For like 1 or 2 years. I'm looking at my GameCube collection because like I'm pretty sure I have that, but oh yeah, I do. I got Hits 2003. Have not played it yet.
That is a uncommon GameCube game. So congratulations.
Really? Thank you. It has the manual and everything. Complete. It's scratched up. I might have to use your buffer again, Andy.
Yeah. But yeah, I think arcade style is definitely the way to go. They're the most fun with other players too, for sure. You could have a ton of fun with those.
They had NFL Extreme, too, wasn't it? That tried to be Blitz.
Yeah, that was 989. So fuck that.
Yeah, it was.
We gotta do, like, I'm telling you, 989 is gonna be a topic one of these times. It's gonna be awesome.
What games
I'm
you
gonna
wrecked?
curse so
It's like
much. Yes.
A lot of pent-up aggression for that episode.
You just ruined so much. Everything that was good. Just flush it down the crapper.
And then it turned into 343.
I know that was my theory, was that half of the development team went on to form 343 and then ruined Halo. So, but then they made Halo 4
Yeah.
and that's good. So
Yep.
I don't know what to think. Anyway, well, so I'll throw like a game out here, a franchise. I'll throw it under arcade because I don't know where it fits in the rest of this because it's not fake and it's not simulation. But Tony Hawk, the series, even though it didn't go to arcade, I would say that that's an arcade style game. I don't know. I love those games. Like if you're gonna classify them as sports, which I'm going to because I was a skateboarder growing up. Tony Hawk 2 for me was like perfection. I think it's the best in the series because like it's all arcadey, right, and unrealistic, but it limited the move set to a way that was like somewhat feasible. And then once you get past Tony Hawk 2, you get into like the half pipe revert to manual bullshit that just it makes it a more arcadey game and like combo driven, but it's not skating anymore, I guess. Not really.
Yeah. It's funny that you can like almost do this whole topic in extreme sports games as well, because you have the retro ones that are not great. You got arcade ones, I would say, like Tony Hawk. You got simulation ones like Skate. You know, they all fit certain things.
What about like Cool Borders then? What would you classify that? Because
Well, it depends on what you're talking.
like
Once 989
Oh, no.
got it, it became like an action sports arcade fiesta. But if you look at Cool Borders 1 and 2,
Yeah.
those are just racing games, right? With the snowboarding coat of paint. And they're much better games. Fuck you, 99.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, like the first SSX is mostly racing too.
A racing game. Yeah. Probably the spiritual successor to like the first proper 1 and 2 Cool Borders games, to be honest. And then there's that weird one for the Dreamcast too.
Trick style.
I always talk about how great this is. No, Trick Style's garbage. Oh my god. That is an awful
Riders.
game. It's
Yeah.
Rippin' Riders. There we go. Yeah. And you could tell that was made by a lot of the same people who had a hand in at least Cool Borders 2. It's kind of like a very watered down version of that game. Like they didn't quite have the budget to develop it properly, but
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could go on and on about extreme sports games, I think.
what about like wrestling games and stuff? I mean, did you guys do that stuff on the
Yeah.
64?
yeah, no
I think those
mercy.
are more fighting to me.
Yeah, well,
It's a lot more combos and stuff like that.
I don't know what you classify
Yeah.
that. Fake?
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Simulation. I mean, come on.
So yeah, I mean, when you're talking about modern sports games, you're talking about simulation, and that's kind of where I jumped off the train on sports games, just because it's like that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for easy pick up and play. I will say, since baseball is my favorite sport still, that I still play baseball occasionally, but you go in there and you play 3 innings with the sliders up, it's not what they want out of that, and who's buying that game, I guess, is they're catering to the real hardcore simulation people in those games now. Same thing with Madden.
Did you pick up RBI?
No, I haven't.
For the Switch at all? Okay. I heard it was pretty watered down.
Yep.
But that's more arcadey than like MLG.
The show,
right?
yeah.
What is the show?
Yeah, like I guess simulation.
MLB. Not MLB, sorry.
Simulation game for like anything PlayStation up. I'd have to say baseball probably plays the best. Like you got Triple Play and the show. Like, those two probably play the best as far as simulation goes. Just because there's the least bugs and just random shit that happens that shouldn't. And then probably NHL, but
For me, my favorite parts of those games turned out to be me pretending that I own the team and telling the managers and telling the players what they should be doing. So it was like simulating being a billionaire.
Nice. So
Yep.
you'd be like, cut those sideburns. Nice.
you play any of the games where you have to
Oh, yeah.
adjust ticket prices and
The hot dogs.
manage
Yep.
the yeah the beer.
We're talking about theme park simulator? What the fuck are you guys playing?
You gotta manage the stadium. Make sure you're making enough money to pay the players.
Wow. Interesting. I didn't know it got that granular.
It tries to, at least.
Well, and you gotta love too that in like today's modern like sports game landscape, like you've got obviously Madden coming out every year with no competition because in the early 2000s they bought the NFL license out from underneath 2K, who was creeping up with a better product on their territory. So it's kind of interesting that you've got like this landmark franchise that comes out year after year, but they don't really have to do anything with it other than slap a new roster on there because there's nothing else, right?
Yeah, they try to add like a new version of a game mode or something, but it's mainly the same thing. It's like buying every year is pointless.
Yeah, for sure. And in basketball, 2K is kind of the gold standard, where EA has been trying the past few years putting something out. It just is not catching on. And baseball, you can't even buy a simulation baseball game on 360 anymore, or Xbox, because
No. Yeah.
right,
That's all they get is
Sony
RBI,
owns
right?
the
There was
show.
2K for a while, but that fell off
Yeah,
like
13 was
4
the
or 5
last
years
one, I
ago, I
think.
suppose.
Yeah. And then, hockey, they just don't really care. They keep putting the same thing out. It's like they don't really update it all that much. So
They did add the ESHL or whatever thing, or is that what it's called? Basically, you make your own guy and progress, and you play with 5 other people online against
Oh, really?
6
Okay.
other people. So it's 6-on-6 real people, and you play each position. So you got one person that plays goalie, and then the other 5.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Sounds like a nightmare to coordinate everybody.
Yeah. I assume the person that gets stuck playing goalie is just swearing the entire time.
Yeah. Well, and like, how would you even be able to see what's going on? Because you have to see you at the end of the thing, but you wouldn't know where what's happening on the other side either, unless they're showing
Right.
the whole thing.
But yeah, I don't really know how it is, but I assume it's like as if you're playing the goalie, I assume you're stuck in like the goalie's eyes, so you have to watch
Yeah.
it all the way down the ice.
Huh.
Like, does the puck get highlighted? Like, how do you know when it's coming at you?
Yeah.
Then I wonder too how far you can actually go out, because when you're playing I haven't played an NHL game for a few years now, but I used to actually play goalie on NHL games. I'd do the create a person and play as goalie, and you could only go a certain distance away from the goal. So like you watch on live like games, they go out and try to stop the puck when it's coming down for icing. You can't get out there all the time on there in the created player.
Oh.
So I wonder if they fixed that finally or what, because it like has like an invisible barrier wall where you just run out so far and then you're just like skating into nothing and stopped.
Huh.
Fairly entertaining. But again, that was, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it seems like the market is set for just basically one major sports game of each sport now. Whereas, PS1, it was like every company trying to do it. So it's pretty crazy where it got to at this point where there's millions more gamers out there, yet they're all kind of lassoed up into, one game for each sport. But I think the last, I guess, little silo that I would put sports games in are fake sports games. And what I mean by that are the best sports games because you're using the interactive platform and creativity of people to make their own sports games. And not necessarily talking about esports because that's kind of like a whole nother thing. I'm talking about something that's maybe loosely based on a sport that we already have. Probably the big example I would say right now is Rocket League. Obviously is based on soccer, but it's not, right? It's not really soccer in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, there's a ball and 2 nets, so it's slightly.
Cars flying. Similar, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, cars flying normal soccer all the time.
You got other ones too, I suppose. What was that one on Xbox that was free a while back? A couple years ago?
That one's fun.
iDarb?
iDarb?
I can't remember what that's like. Basketball, was it? Or
Best. No, well, it's kind of like soccer. A little bit of soccer and a little bit of basketball. Like, it was sort of like basketball, football, and Quidditch all had like a baby. And then it crapped out in 16-bit.
iDarb.
Yeah, iDarb is good stuff. Although that was short-lived. I mean, that's only fun for so long.
It's probably easier to go back to and play more. It's going to be the fake ones, because like Rocket League, everybody can get into that.
Right. Rocket League is like one of the greatest games of all time, that's for sure.
It's definitely up there.